some people don't enjoy working remotely because they like to be surrounded by people and they're social animals and so on
I'm
and
one
so
of them.
forth.
I am
Yeah.
one of them. I hate remote work. It is the bane of my existence. But the reality is it's a lot less expensive. I don't have to have an office. I don't have to pay the bills. I don't have to do all that. And construction in particular has FOMO more than any industry I've ever seen in my life. The fear of missing out is massive.
What do you mean?
And if you find out that you lost a bid to contractor X
Okay.
and you find out later that they're using product Y and you're not. And I promise you the very first thing they do is go to product Y's website. Oh, what is that?
Hey everyone, and welcome to the Bricks and Bytes podcast, where we dive into construction and AEC technology. Before we get started though, if you're a startup founder or operator responsible for innovation in your company, or you want a deeper, more insightful look into technology in AEC, you won't want to miss our newsletter. From deep dives into particular technologies such as AI, robotics, design, software, and so on. Hot takes from investors betting big in AEC technology, and advice on building tech companies, including the stories and takeaways of the most successful AEC technology founders. Head over to www.bricks-bytes.com and sign up today to get this exclusive material straight to your inbox. And now for the episode. Major construction projects are complex, and construction managers know that every day things don't go as planned. Unfortunately, most don't know what and why until it's too late. The best construction leaders know that the secret to delivering on schedule is for everyone to be planning together, committing to targets, and tracking their performance every day. By combining look-aheads, weekly work plans, visual staging diagrams, and daily activity briefings into one multiplayer platform, AFEX is where the world's leading projects are planned and coordinated. Join the largest projects and contractors across Europe, the UK, Asia, Australia, and New Zealand, and discover why at afex.co.
All right, Britton. Well, so you're now this is officially. Well, I don't know if the first one was official. Actually, it was a bit of off of a whim that we managed to get you on Bricks and Bytes. Probably, actually, it was last year, last June. So welcome back.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
in a slightly different setting now. But yeah, so people can understand the context of my first statement. We were at a conference, NXT Build in London. And we walked up to Britain and said, hey, come and speak to us on our podcast. And it's a little bit strange when you approach people like that because you expect people just, like, oh, no, I'm not sure. It's a little bit forthcoming. But you were like, yeah, let's go. I was like, oh, wow, okay, that was easy.
Yeah, let's go.
And so
I love this stuff.
Yeah, cool. And then so 20 minutes, we done a quick 20-minute stint with you. But now we're back and we're going to hear a little bit more about the full story of Britain, because as we all now know, thanks to a very sneaky person within the world of tech, you have launched a new business which has just received funding. And when we spoke before, the whole point of the discussion we're going to have today was actually, not the whole point, but a big chunk of it was announcing this fundraise that you have just done. But like I just said, some sneaky person called Drake Jukes kind of beat us to it.
Yeah.
So Britton, welcome. And yeah, tell us the
Thank
story.
you. Yeah. Well, you learn these lessons now in the world of AI that there are scrapers out there that can do some great things. And there's a newsletter in the venture capital world called Drake Duke's newsletter. And I was applying for the Microsoft startup and found out that Microsoft requires you to sort of announce your company that you're building on your LinkedIn, in the sense of like, I am now the founder and CEO of BuildFactory. I thought, I'll put it on there for 48 hours, get the application through, and then switch back to stealth, and no one will notice. No one's looking at my profile. And yeah, Drake Dukes apparently has a web scraper that finds founders who are coming out of stealth, and he has a newsletter called Stealth Startup, I think it is. And yeah, he listed me and BuildFactory
That's fine.
There you go. Yeah. And yeah, listed me and BuildFactory, and I was like, wait a minute. And we had, I guess he has 30,000 followers, and within about 30 minutes of him doing that, I had 20 emails in my LinkedIn inbox, and about 4 or 5 emails. And all of a sudden I saw a bunch of people hitting the website, and yeah, apparently it was out at that point.
That's funny. So to qualify for this newsletter, you had to have had on your LinkedIn profile that you're currently in stealth. I think there's like a company. It's actually the logo of the website of his newsletter, which is like that stealth. It's like a stealth B-2 bomber, right? From what I can see.
Yeah. And it's funny too, because it even said how long I was in stealth. So it clearly tracks like when you went in stealth and when you came out, and that you were a previous founder and had a successful exit. And so there's a lot of variables there that he's clearly tracking. But yeah, he hit it, and within 24 hours of me doing that, it was posted.
How did the Microsoft go?
But we did get the startup certification. So yeah, all in all, it's fine. But it definitely sort of preempted the announcement I wanted to make later. But at the end of the day, I think it's fine. Everybody knows that we're out here building the next great company. And yes, we received funding from some great investors, and the product's not out there yet, but it will be soon. In fact, today we launched our beta product, and we'll be launching the full product here in a few weeks.
Oh, looking forward to hearing about that. Well, what I would say is maybe your third company, third time founding, perhaps you won't go through the same experience. I'm sure there'll be something more sophisticated by then.
Probably.
Cool.
I'll probably not be able to say anything until it's ready. So,
all right, let's kick this off then. So I think today we're going to dive into M Suite. So we never went there before, but you were previously a founder and had a successful exit with M Suite to Stanley Black Decker. Dive into BuildFactory, your new venture, and then we'll just have some general discussion about building products within the AEC or construction tech space. But before we kick off, Britton, I'm very curious. We never spoke to someone who's building a company in Iowa before. Well, maybe Iowa, but Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Okay, so yeah, and maybe this will lead to another point: is that you have quite a decentralized team. So maybe you could speak to us about that.
Well, on the Iowa thing. It's funny. A lot of B2C companies are obviously Silicon Valley, New York, et cetera. But when you look at really great B2B companies, many of them started in the Midwest. Collins Aerospace, Rockwell Collins here is right down the street from me. They were bought a handful of times now and are now underneath the Raytheon organization, but they were a very large and still a very large avionics producer for Boeing and Northrop Grumman, and a lot of the airplanes we all fly in today, and then government aircraft as well. So, a very strong tech company here in Cedar Rapids. There's big data center company called Involta. There's a bunch, but the reality I think is the best B2B companies are built around the people that use them. And in construction technology in the Midwest, and specifically in smaller towns like Cedar Rapids, I worked for Modern Piping, and this is where M Suite came out of. And Modern Piping, as a result of where we are, did work on the nuclear power plant down the street, Duane Arnold Nuclear Power Plant. They'd built a children's hospital that everyone sees at University of Iowa football games that the people wave to. They built the Hancher Art Museum, but they built elementary schools. They work at Cargill and Quaker Oats and International Paper and ADM. So a very broad spectrum of types of projects. And I think what M Suite really benefited from that was that when we built it, we had to accommodate for all those different types of work. And so, being able to build something for businesses that all of a sudden you're able to accommodate for many different types of work all the way across the US and Canada, at least for M Suite, was a huge benefit. So, I think in most places you get really hyper focused on something and you end up building it for one type of customer. But we were very fortunate because of where we are and the types of work that are done here that we built it for many different customers right out of the gate.
How did you know it was the right time to sell?
Sell the company?
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe you could just tell us briefly what M Suite was, and then.
Yeah, so M Suite was a offsite construction, really focused on the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing businesses. Let's call it an MRP. It was for the shop floor. It was for the shop management team. It was for sort of the supply chain of BIM to Fab to Field. We built some automation tools in Revit that would allow for MEP companies to create fabrication drawings or fabrication assemblies much quicker than they could prior to us, and then send those things to the fab shop where the fab shop manager and the team over there could manage the flow and pick and choose what things would go to what stations and what people. And really make sure that they're doing it in the leanest possible way. But then all the while, it was a cloud-based system. So anyone had access. If it was a customer that wanted access or the field, everyone could see where things were in real time. And because of the way we did it with iPads on the shop floor and tracking everything that was happening, we knew exactly how long each process took. We knew the productivity metrics. We knew how to populate timesheets automatically, how to do cost allocation automatically. So we had a lot of really great data. And that, was the first time that had been done. There wasn't another software out there at the time when we started that could do any of that. So it expanded rapidly. But it's funny, I always say, when we first started MSuite, which was 2015, when we did more teaching of the benefits of prefab and like why you should do things offsite than we did selling software because we were very early. There wasn't a whole bunch of people really advanced in this. And so, I got to experience a lot of how people learned how to prefab and the benefits of moving things offsite, but then the challenges of scaling that and doing that repeatedly in an offsite facility. And there is a really standard pattern, sort of an evolution that almost every company goes through in that sort of influenced what we're doing at BuildFactory. But, the reality is MSuite was created to sort of stitch together that entire BIM to fab to field work.
Okay. To Martin's question then.
Why did we,
I
when did we know it
jumped
was right to
straight
sell?
away into the end.
Yeah.
Yeah. When did we know it was
From
right to
founder's
sell?
point
Well,
of view, like what was going on in your head when the opportunity came up?
Yeah. So the first part of the story is that we were given an offer by another company not named Stanley Black Decker. And because of our raise in 2020, where Stanley Ventures was a part of that, they had a board observer seat. Well, when I went to the board and said that we're getting an LOI, Stanley Black Decker said, "Oh no, you're not. We're going to put an LOI in front of you that's in front of that one." And so that was sort of the impetus for them buying it. I wouldn't say we definitely hadn't planned it. We were planning on raising another round later that year. But our majority owners were the Modern Piping folks that we spun it out of. And they had already put $4 million in it. And we were growing rapidly. And rather than wait until they could take the chips off the table, they saw the opportunity was right. And off we went.
Beautiful. Was it was the well, I suppose you mentioned that it was not you didn't necessarily have any intention of selling it at the time, but did you so with that, what made you then think, yeah, I'm actually going to sell? Was it because the offer was too good to ignore? Were you thinking about something in the future? Or?
I mean, it was partly that, but really it was the vision that we collectively had. The reason why Stanley Black Decker bought us, and that vision was ultimately created by the former CEO Jim Lurie, who was a sort of R&D visionary. He believed in like Stanley X and the DeWalt Digital Accelerator in Atlanta. He was looking at ways that ultimately DeWalt or Stanley Black Decker would be disrupted, whether that was a digital technology or a physical tool.
Not like the current one then.
Unlike the current one to some degree. I'm not going to say anything bad about Don Allen and that team, but very different approaches to the industry. And Jim and Jaime Ramirez and Brad Roberts and a lot of people who are no longer there saw this opportunity to connect the digital tools with the physical tools, and not just in a way of like Bluetooth tool tracking, but actually the full end-to-end workflow for trade contractors. And MSuite sort of sitting in the middle of that workflow, like I said, BIM to fab to field. Being on the digital side, we controlled shop tools, right? The Tiger Stop cutting tables. We connected to the large plasma machines. We were working on connecting to welding machines like the Novark semi-robotic welder. So we had this sort of connection where we were the connective tissue between the digital and the physical space. And when you start bringing the tools into that, you can start to see like, okay, this is a different picture of how to manage projects. And the vision for that, was also to look at offsite tooling, right? If the future of construction is continuously moving offsite, what does that look like for a company that makes drills and saws? And if you're expecting a whole bunch of people to hold those in their hands, what's going to happen when that ecosystem changes? So that was sort of the vision for why we were bought. And I think I bought into that. That was what we ultimately wanted to be as well, is sort of that connective tissue. And then being able to do that with a brand like DeWalt, I mean, that's a hard thing to turn down. Obviously, the money was great for the modern folks and for the rest of our shareholders. But really, it was the vision that we wanted to accomplish when, after we were acquired, that was so exciting.
Yeah. Was there a particular thing that obviously to be acquired, you need to have something that's like going for you. So what was it? Was it the quality of the product? Was it certain financial metrics or otherwise that people saw when
I think it was more strategic than that. We had a lot of the country and a lot of North America's greatest mechanical, electrical, plumbing companies as part of our user base. And as part of that user base, we had the best data that anyone could possibly collect at the grassroots level. Like I said, we knew exactly what was being fabricated. We knew exactly how long it took. We knew what processes they were taking. So when it came to being able to benchmark the industry and being able to understand what best practices look like from a construction perspective, we had that. And so when DeWalt or Stanley Black Decker looked at that, they saw an opportunity to stitch that together and really create a different understanding of how to construct and what those best practices are. And so it was mostly that. Obviously, we had great metrics. I think when we were acquired, we had 140% net retention. So that is absurd for a SaaS business.
What does that mean?
Yeah.
It means every year the companies we sold to would on average increase their usage or increase their licenses by 40%.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
That's
awesome. It's a great model.
Yeah.
So we had a very sticky business, a very, very well-run or well-accepted business, I should say. And we weren't huge by any stretch.
How did you do it then? What
they
was the secret of the CEO's force?
Rolling up your sleeves and doing the hard work. When customers are upset and it's legitimate, fix it.
Yeah.
When you need to invest more in customer success and account management, do it. When the product, and I think actually one of the things I will say is we as a team were very, very good at distilling complex problems that came to you from many different angles and lenses into fairly simple solutions. And so when everyone said, hey, we want to know exactly our throughputs through the shop, and another one said, hey, we want to be able to automate timesheets, we found a way to do both without having to do double effort. So there was a lot of luck involved, but at the end of the day, I think the thing I would say is there's no shortcuts. You got to do the hard work, and you got to listen to your customers, and sometimes you have to ignore them, and sometimes you have to do exactly what they said, and sometimes it's in between. But being able to sort of distill that all down is the art of great product builders, and we had a lot of those on our team.
How did you manage the pricing model when you knew that the retention is 140%? So because there is an clear incentive here to increase the prices to kind of manage the growth. Like what was your thinking here?
When before we were acquired, it was largely just a per user price, just traditional SaaS. And we didn't necessarily have to manage the expansion from a dollars and cents perspective, because anytime you're doing a per user price, you're incentivizing the company to not expand, and because they want to do as much with as few licenses as possible. But the way we built the software, by being sort of that connected tissue between BIM and Fab and Field, if you wanted to be more connected, if you wanted your team to have more information and be able to make better decisions, they had to have access, right? And so there was that natural propensity to expand on their side. Obviously, when annual subscriptions were coming up, we would negotiate and bring price down a little bit to help them expand and encourage that expansion. And I got to give a lot of credit to the VP of sales over at Stanley Black Decker, Ricardo Rodriguez. He really came up with sort of an enterprise pricing model that would just say, okay, if you're above this number of users, it's X price, and that's that. We don't care if you go to 300 users or 200 users or 500 users. It's let's say it's $100,000. That's all it's going to be, and we care more about you as a customer and retaining you as a customer than we do about the incremental growth in the licenses. So I think enterprise pricing at a large scale was huge and really benefited the company and ultimately our users. But yeah, I think it wasn't that sophisticated back then. Now you have to do a lot more with sort of usage-based pricing and consumption-based pricing. And I think if I was starting all over from an M-Suite perspective, it might look a little different, but they're doing really well.
What's your like first advice for people who are trying to figure out pricing for their startups?
That's a great question. There's a lot of great books on pricing models. Don't ask me to rattle them off to you. I'll send them to you after this. But I think it largely depends on what you're offering. I think the old metric was that you could only charge for about 1/10 of the value that you were creating.
I love that.
And if that's what people would be willing to pay. I think that's changing in today's world of AI. I mean, you look at stuff like Cursor and Lovable and other stuff that's $200 a month for a user. They're obviously creating a lot more value than $2,000 per month, but the reality is that's where we're at today. And obviously that is very early on, and these things will evolve. But I think people are more outcome based today. So if you're looking at how you're going to price something, I think you have to first understand what is the outcome you're creating and work backwards. And if that ends up being a subscription model or a consumption model or a project-based model, whatever fits your organization best. I can tell you VCs always want, recurring income, and, anyone who's going to buy your company wants predictable income. So if that's the desire that you have, is to exit in some way, sure. If you want to become a public company, or if you want to grow and become a profitable business, that can look very different. So it kind of depends on what outcome you want.
I would argue that predictable outcome, you said, right? Predictable outcome.
Yeah. It's an
Or income, it
Income,
comes from
yeah.
well, it actually works in this sense. It stems from the value provided, and how much value can you keep providing to your customers. Then you can make some assumptions and have some predictable income and outcome, I think.
Well, and the nature of human consumption is that we are never satiated. And I always give the children's book example. If you give a mouse a cookie, have you ever heard that book? If you give a mouse a cookie, it's going to want a glass of milk, and it keeps going, and it's a cute little book.
That's true.
But it's when the iPhone came out with its portrait mode, and you had this whole thing where you could blur the whole background and create this really cool picture. For 2 seconds, everyone was like, "This is amazing." And then 2 seconds later, it was like, "Wait a minute, I can only be 8 feet away from this person? That doesn't make any sense. Like, that's dumb." It's like, wait a minute, 2 seconds ago, you couldn't even do this. Who cares if it's only 8 feet? Like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
That's the nature of what we do. So when you're creating value from a technology perspective, you have to understand the current value you're creating and immediately recognize that value is now table stakes. And you have to add value to that as quickly as you possibly can.
I think that's a beautiful thing in life, that we need to keep raising the bar to.
Yeah, this is how humans evolve.
If we know, if it's not us, then someone else will.
That's exactly right. That is exactly how we evolve. And I think that's,
who am I? We're the only humans on the planet.
That's true.
If it's not you, it will be someone else.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Sure.
Hey, Britton, what's it like when you receive a acquisition offer and you have to deal with the kind of tense period between receiving it and it actually coming to fruition?
How long did it take?
It was fairly quick from an acquisition perspective. We got the LOI around December 25th, 2021, and
Christmas Day.
Yeah, unfortunately for the people who worked on that LOI. And we were acquired May 22nd, 2022. So 5 months later. Yeah. What's it like? Well, Ralph Guti, who was co-founder at PlanGrid, he and his wife Tracy
We asked
Young.
him the same question, actually.
Did you? Okay. Well, Ralph was on our board.
Okay.
And Ralph, I remember we got the LOI, and he goes, "Britton, this is not going to work out. 99% chance that this fails. So don't get your hopes up. You got to go through a lot of diligence, and odds are it won't work out." And so, I kept that in the back of my head through the whole thing. And he said, the number one thing you have to do is keep growing the business. You got to keep focused. And you just signed up for the hardest, in my case, 5 months of my life, because you're constantly battling the excitement of what could be against the reality of what might not happen. And that you don't get to take the next 5 months off and work on this acquisition. You have to grow it now more than ever because, on one hand, it might not happen, but even if it does happen, the excitement on their end might wane over those 5 months if the business starts stalling in some way. So we did a great job of that. Benny Beltrowski, my COO, Aaron Bloom on our team, they helped keep the train on the rails and going as fast as we ever had. And fortunately, we went through what I would characterize as a great diligence experience. And ultimately, we got acquired on May 10th, and it was a great experience.
Not getting into like details, but what is the diligence mostly about? Is it like, give us an example? Not from this acquisition, but like what kind of things people come across?
Well, I'll tell you this. Stanley Black Decker on their diligence team had more people than we had on staff. Fortune 500 does diligence on a company as small as us the same way they do on a company that has $1 billion in revenue. So it's no different. Wow. Yeah, and it was funny stuff. Like, we had cybersecurity diligence where their IT team came in and asked, tell us about your on-site servers. I'm like, what do you mean on-site servers? Like, well, in your offices, tell us about your servers. I'm like, we don't have any servers. Like, we do everything in Office 365. What are you talking about? And they're like,
what's that?
Okay. Yeah. They're like, okay, well, what about, your gateways and like your internet connection? I'm like, well, most of our people are remote. They're like, oh, okay. And then after like an hour's conversation, like, all right, well, you don't need to talk to us anymore. We're good.
That's funny.
Some things were like that. Other things, as a small business, you're not paying attention to your subscription tax burden in each state, maybe exactly how you should. And back then, nobody was using Avalara and some of these other great software to help manage that. So we had to go back through all of our invoices, all of our subscription docs, and make sure that we were paying taxes and make sure that we were doing all the right things, that all the terms were exactly the same. Because over I think at the time is 7 or 8 years of different subscriptions. Our first customer was Bestard Mechanical in London, Ontario. They had renewed every year from 2015. They were on the same contract since 2015, same terms, same everything, which was garbage. Like it was a contract written probably by me, and I didn't know what I was doing. Whereas the guys and girls who signed up in 2022 were on this like really nice, legally written, formatted, not perfectly done thing to meet compliance. So we had to go and have everybody re-sign contracts that were on old stuff. So it's little stuff like that. There's a lot of very tedious work that has to happen, but to get ready to roll into a Fortune 500 company, it makes a lot of sense because they have such high bar for compliance that you got to get to that bar as fast as possible.
Pretty important question.
Profitable
Sorry,
at the time?
I've got an important question just around this point before you move on. Would be obviously, so what you mentioned about these subscriptions and taxes and whatnot. When you're building a startup, you can't. This is stuff that you probably don't pay too much attention to. You should, but you're probably just like, look, let's just keep going forward and blah 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 blah.
Yeah, we'll fix that later.
Exactly. Doing it now as a second founder, you don't have to give away too much. But is your mindset different now? Like, are you gonna will you like be as compliant, should I say, from day one, or are you still like, compliant? No, let's just build and then worry about when it comes up?
Certain things yes, certain things no.
Yeah.
When it comes to like cybersecurity and sort of technical diligence that we went under, yeah, it's dramatically changed the way I look at how you build things. And also, with the technology today, you can use things like Vanta or Sprinto and be compliant to SOC 2 Type 2 like that. So, back when we first started this, it would have been months worth of work to do that. So, some of these things, technology has enabled, the ability to leapfrog a lot of the problems we had. But other things like, am I going to worry that the CRM is set up properly and that it's all perfect and that, that all of the columns are exactly? No, because that's a waste of time.
Yeah,
the only people that benefit from that are our own company. And when we get to the point where it's so annoying we need to change it, we'll change it.
Yeah.
And so it's some of that experience around what matters and what doesn't matter that informs for this. So yeah, A little bit yes, a little bit no.
Fair enough.
Were you profitable at the time of selling or around the time?
No. We're like every early stage startup. We had hundreds of logos using the software and a great ACV, but obviously great retention. But we're building to scale, so we had a lot of people on our team, and we're growing. But no,
You're gonna blow
not happening.
Martin's mind by saying that. He's gonna go on a rant now about I can't believe that it's blah 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 blah.
Well, I think
I am a small business guy.
No, I think look, I almost didn't raise money to do this. I almost bootstrapped it, and now I just read something about seed strapping.
Where people are, new thing actually.
I've not heard. What's that?
And then people are raising seed rounds and then becoming profitable, and then we don't have to scale like that. We can scale our company in a profitable way.
I love
VCs do not, and so that's that. But I think at the end of the day, you as the founder and the team growing the business have to make those decisions for the best decision for the company and ultimately for its trajectory. Those decisions are different for every business. Some people want to hyper focus on getting to profitability. I know the folks over at TestFit and that whole team, and they've done a great job of becoming profitable as an early stage startup. And then there's others who want to shoot for the moon and go out and raise tens of millions of dollars, and there isn't a chance in a decade they'll be profitable. Heck, I mean, Procore's barely profitable.
Yeah.
So I think it just depends on a lot of different variables that I would never try to stand here and tell people how they should grow their business, because it's the guy or girl in the ring that has to make those decisions.
What's your stance on this in terms of there are levers that people can pull to become hyperscale or to scale more and be less profitable or more less profitable? What is doing it for another time? What is your way of thinking about it?
I don't think I know yet. I think I would love to be a seed strap company if we start seeing the growth and traction and trajectory. It's definitely more sustainable. You're not chasing after the next fundraising round and putting those shackles on yourself, from that perspective. If you're trying to go public or trying to get acquired by PE or something like that, maybe it makes more sense to go raise a big round and try to prove your ultimate value of where you are, even if your value isn't accretive. But I think ultimately it depends on the outcome that you're looking for. And right now, I would say as a business, I'm more focused on the value I can create and the outcome I can provide to our customers. And if that ends up being successful and we generate tons of revenue, we'll have to make that decision down the road. But I think I lean more today in becoming profitable and growing a sustainable business because I think a lot more about my legacy today than I probably did when I was younger, and what can I leave behind. I've only got probably 20 more years of mattering in this business. At that point, some young kid will take over and change the world with some crazy robot or AI or whatever, or the next thing.
You might be underestimating experience.
Well, I have a limited window of time, and I want to have as much impact as I can and change and grow the industry for the better. And so if I can do that, I'll make that decision when we cross that bridge.
Cool. Okay.
Shall we move to
let's go.
BeamFabField?
Shall
we move to BeamFabField?
What's that?
Well, which is towards BuildFactory.
Yeah, let's go to BuildFactory.
Yeah.
So
maybe
I go on mine.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So I'll maybe start with BeamFabField. You mentioned this concept a few times. Is it a perfect tool there right now to design things for manufacturing?
No. No, not even close. No, I think the existing tools, the Autodesk platform, Bentley and the rest serve their purposes very well. Let's face it, buildings get built every day, and people are profitable in those industries. Full stop. Could it be better? Yeah, it could be a lot better. Could buildings be built for less? Yes, they can. and less money, less time, less risk, less, everything. So the opportunity is ripe, but the tools that are out there today serve a purpose, and they do it very well. I think that, the construction industry is evolving quickly in its processes. And I know it's kind of crazy to say, but when you look out there, that the rate of change over the last 5 years is exponential to the 5 years before that. And I think a lot of people in construction are adopting technologies to try to become more efficient, to try to become safer, and to try to become a better builder. To the extent that you see VC arms of construction companies, Suffolk Technologies coming out of Suffolk Construction, and many others. Kajima invests heavily in as an LP in a lot of VCs. I think everyone's trying to figure that out. I don't think there's the perfect solution yet, and there probably never will be. Humans, as we said, evolve quickly, much quicker than technology can. Will somebody make a leapfrog? Yes. And I think it'll probably happen within the next 5 years. What that is, I don't know yet.
In construction, precision matters. Every budget line, every schedule, every document. But too often, project data is scattered across tools and departments, creating risky silos. That's where ArcDesk comes in. ArcDesk is the all-in-one construction management platform designed to connect your entire project operation, from opportunity through to tender, all the way to handover. With real-time dashboards, cost control, scheduling, procurement, and document management in one place, ArcDesk gives you complete visibility and control. Trusted by contractors, subcontractors, and asset owners worldwide, ArcDesk has powered landmark projects from shopping centers to Europe's tallest buildings. If you're ready to reduce risk, protect your margins, and deliver projects with confidence, discover ArcDesk today and visit arcdesk.com, that's ARCH desk.com, and see how leading firms are building smarter with ArcDesk.
Okay. All right, Britton. So tell us about BuildFactory. What is it? What was like the news is that you've just raised your seed round.
Yeah.
So maybe you could
pre-seed, actually.
Pre-seed. Okay.
I don't know how they define these things, but that's what everyone tells me.
Fair enough.
So we raised our pre-seed round. BuildFactory is an ecosystem for offsite construction. It is built around the learnings that we had at M-Suite and the learnings I had in construction and the learnings I had in construction sales before that. Eons ago, I was involved as a salesperson and a sales manager at a company called Victaulic. They make couplings, valves, and fittings, the world's largest manufacturer of these things. And I benefited from the knowledge of some amazing people over there and getting the opportunity to sit in fab shops across the country frequently. And then I got to go work in a fab shop and build one and build a BIM department. And that ultimately sort of matriculated into M-Suite. And BuildFactory comes out of that experience as this ecosystem where we're connecting those people who have capacity to prefab. Because one of the things I learned in over the last almost 20 years is that this evolution of a prefab shop, when you build a shop and you begin to optimize it and you get really good at prefab, what happens almost immediately to all of them is that they are able, their own capacity, their own ability to produce far outstrips their own demand. Right? You start getting robotic welders and automated cutting stations and press brakes and shears and all these things. All of a sudden, your own field is only needing a certain amount of work, and then all of a sudden, the work may dry up in a certain area, right? And the nature of construction is cyclical anyway. So you end up with these beautiful facilities and people building carts and fire pits and things like that for their friends and family, just to kill time until the next job comes in. And so there's this pent-up capacity that exists everywhere, and no one likes to talk about it because it feels like you should be better than this. But the reality is it's a supply and demand problem. And so to fix that supply and demand problem, you go find the people that have the most demand, these data center projects, hospital projects, renovation of office buildings into residential buildings. Those people are underwater. They literally don't have time to do the work they just signed up for. And they don't want to admit that because they just signed up for it. right? I was talking to a contractor the other day that said they needed to find 278 people by the end of the year.
Yeah,
to meet the demand.
we've had similar things, to be honest with you, and the
Of
evolution
course.
of the demand now coming into prefab because of the demand from big tech and data centers. So.
Well, it's huge. And so, there's also a big cost difference across regions. Construction used to be local, right? It was always known as being local. The engineer was down the street, the construction company's down the street, the people building it right down the street. And in large part because that's where the project is, right? You got to go to the project and you got to meet in the rooms and you got to talk through things and all those things. COVID changed that, right? BIM services are done globally, right? You can sit anywhere in the world and design a building. Architects have been doing it for a long time. Trade contractors and general contractors are starting to see, like, wait a minute, I can hire a great BIM person in Philadelphia that's designing a building in LA. Doesn't make any difference. Fabrication cost is a huge difference, right? And yeah, it's a very big difference in where you sit and the cost of living and things like that. And so there's that opportunity as well. But I think the interesting thing that people are starting to see is that fabrication is not local. You can ship thousands of miles for a few $1,000. Well, if you have $150,000 sitting on the back of that truck, that makes sense. If it's $5,000 sitting on the back of the truck, that does not make sense. You might need to be a little bit more local, but that constraint is becoming more elastic. And the marketplace provides an opportunity now where if a construction company takes a bid at a very low margin and they're concerned about that and need to find ways to become better, it's not just like, hey, we can prefab more. Now it's, hey, maybe we can prefab some of this in the market 200 miles down the road that's a little less expensive to help us make up some of that deficit. It's not all about, hey, let's find a team and bring them together and find all the change orders we can find so that we can make some more money back, right? There's that aspect of it. And then there's the capacity problem where they got another job and they're excited that they have it. And they turn around and look at their labor resources and go, we don't have the people to do this. And how do we do this? We can partner up with, company X or company Y, or you can dump, a percentage of that work into the marketplace and have it to the job site in more of a just-in-time way and maybe even save a few bucks. So there's that opportunity. And I think, as things evolve, you guys know, you live in the other part of the world. The rest of the world builds very differently than the United States. There are typically subcontracts for the design side, even at the trade contractor. There's a subcontract for the design side. There's a subcontract for fabrication. There's a subcontract for install. That doesn't happen in the US. It's all one contract. I think the GCs and owners in the US are starting to see that you can democratize this work a little bit better and maybe get things in a little bit more efficient way. But, that's sort of really high level. So we're building this ecosystem where it unlocks some of these doors that have been previously locked. And then the other side of that is if you unlock these doors, the very first thing you have is a supply chain problem. The typical project management software you see today is not built to handle an asynchronous, democratized supply chain, right? It isn't meant to handle more than a few parties on a subcontract or on a contract. And so now that you have, let's say 12 organizations doing fabrication for one trade, holy crap, I probably need to manage all of those 12 organizations and know the status of each one of them's fabrication process, right? Is it on a truck? Is it going to be delivered next week like they thought? Or is it delayed? And if it's delayed, how delayed is it? And so we're building sort of that layer on top of M-Suite and M-Suite's old competitors that surfaces that information up to maybe a project management level where they can now start to see and manage across many, many different stakeholders in a really easy, simplified way. And of course, everybody's favorite two letters, it'll be using AI and agentic AI. But the reality is we need to give people the information they need to make the decisions they need to make when they need to make them. And the better we can do that, the better decisions get made.
In terms of prefab constructions, are you limited to some components or maybe verticals? Like what are we talking in terms of prefab construction?
Ultimately, no. But right now we're heavily focused on the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing markets and fire protection markets because that's what we know really well. But ultimately, I'll be coming out with a few pieces. Being in, we haven't talked about it, but I was at Snaptrude prior to this, and that's where we met. And I learned a lot when I was at Snaptrude. And one of the main things I learned was that the industry looks at and defines the word prefab very differently, depending on who you ask. And so I'll be coming out with some pieces on that here in the near future. But prefab can be as small as cutting a piece of pipe and welding it onto a 90-degree elbow, or making a piece of duct, or putting on a conduit onto a rack and shipping it out. It can also be a full bathroom pod. It can be a full modular unit. It could be a kitchen. It can be a lot of different things. A wall panel, yeah, exactly. You know, and I've been a part of many companies that built OR wall panels, or even patient room wall panels with all the med gas and all the electrical in the wall panel, and ships out. At the end of the day, it'll be able to support all of that. But today we're hyper focused on those markets so that we can prove it out and make sure that we have success there. But you know, even right now, I'm handling sort of a brokerage of transactions where I'm handling a 62-foot structural steel platform for the oil and gas business, and I'm handling modular prefab for a company in the southeast part of the United States. So we can handle it all, but we're very focused on MEP right now.
Okay. Very nice. So, marketplace and project management platform, which connects people who are like large builders, general contractors who are building, with prefabrication manufacturers, and effectively enables that transaction, and then helps people to manage the various operations that go on during that process. Good summary?
Yeah, I think so. I think the only thing I'm missing there is that a little bit more into the how. So we are working through the payment process. So we're managing the full payment process. We're managing the full logistics process, so the shipping and delivery of all that prefabrication work. So basically, we're taking the locality of construction away from it, and not overcomplicating it. So we're making that that full workflow from the moment I buy it until the moment I receive it as smooth as it possibly can get, and then de-risking a lot of it. So we're making sure people are getting paid. We're providing payment on the buyer side, even doing a little bit of financing on that so that they don't have to come out of pocket to pay for those things before they're received on site. So we're doing a lot of those things right now that they're a little deeper than just sort of a brokerage.
Britton, curious, where do you start then when you're building such a thing like this? Or what is do you start with getting the fabricators on board, or do you start with bringing customers who might have a fabrication demand, or requirement, and need a prefabricator?
It's a great question, and it is one of the principal questions of marketplaces. And I've read a lot on marketplaces when I decided that this was going to be a thing a few years ago. And I think in our industry, a marketplace like this has to start with the supplier, the fabricator. Because if you have demand and can't fill it, that demand goes away real fast. But if you build a supply network of people who can raise their hand when they have capacity to accept an order, then you give them the ability to fill some of that fab shop capacity that otherwise would be there building carts and fire pits. You have the ability for them to say, yeah, I'll take that. I want that. It helps keep our guys busy, and it helps us make cash flow. So you start with the suppliers, and then you work on the buyer side. And I've been telling most of the people I talk to about this that right now we're at the very early stages of Airbnb, where anyone who had a second home or an apartment in some other city could have rented it out, but they didn't even know that was a thing. And so we have to educate the industry that that downtime in your fab shop, you can be fabricating for other people. And then on the other side, when you need help, when you're slammed with work, or when maybe you need to hopefully make some margin back on a project, there is a place you can go to get help. And the fabricators on it are just like you. They've been vetted. They're as high quality as it gets. We're not just taking every fabricator we can get. We go through and make sure that these folks know what they're doing, and that they're using the right tools. They're automating as much as possible, that they're, on the, I wouldn't say on the bleeding edge, but they have optimized and built fab shops that have a lot of notoriety behind them. So we're out there trying to educate the industry that this is a thing, and hopefully we'll see the Democratic convention of, what was it, 2008 in Denver, that really kicked Airbnb off. Hopefully we'll have an event like that in our own industry. So
I was going to ask whether you had been sleeping on any of the prefabricators' factories couches to kick it off, but
Yeah. I've slept on many of those already, so I've paid
You've done your
paid
time.
my dues there.
Quick question:
Yeah.
How do you, when you're bringing these initial suppliers onto the platform? I suppose there is some kind of go-to-market approach that needs to be considered here. So how do you convince them to say, like, oh, one day there will be demand on here, or perhaps you already have a demand? I don't know. Is there like a strategy or a
Well,
method that you're adopting?
the fun, no, I mean, no. The simple thing about becoming a supplier in the marketplace is, number one, it's free. So there is no cost to them being a supplier in the marketplace.
Referral
And number
fee?
two,
No?
what's that?
Referral fee?
No, there's nothing on the supplier side.
Uh-huh.
And number two, they have pent up capacity. So if they ever get an order from us, it's better than not doing anything on their own. And we're not precluding them from going out and trying to sell their fabrication work either. So they can go out and do their own thing all they want. And if they ever have capacity and we come knocking, they can say yes or no based on the order and move on. So, you know, on the referral fee side, yes, we do have a referral fee that we pay out. So if someone brings us someone that needs to buy prefabrication, we're paying out the person who did that for the entire year that they buy prefab. So we've created a referral network there. But our take rate is on the buyer side. Our goal is to save the buyer 20 to 30%, and then we'll take a small portion of that.
Nice, like it.
So I would call it, I don't know if it is a term of like this, like a residual capacity. This is what you, this is a type of like a supplier that you are aiming for. Do I understand it correctly?
Well, like I said earlier, the reality is that every fabricator at any given moment has open capacity. They don't want to, nobody wants to, but the cyclical nature of construction and the way these shops have optimized, they're so productive that they're hammering out work faster than their teams can install it. So even if it's a day or two, right? If someone just needs a 62-foot platform welded up and it's 2 or 3 days of work, that's awesome for them because it allows them to slot in that work inside of their production cycle, just as if their field had ordered it. So, and we're connecting to all of their digital tools too. So, you know, we're not making them work outside of their normal workflows. It's just like a work package coming in from their own team.
What is interesting, I'm a member, it's too much said, but I participate in a marketplace for structural engineers, and I know there are engineers who build their businesses, like a side businesses, that are set up to supply projects from this particular marketplace. So apart from the normal day-to-day business, they have teams set up dealing with these small or projects particular to this marketplace. Yeah, I think I recently actually learned about that, and it's an interesting concept from suppliers' point of view.
Yeah, I mean, it's spot on. There are certainly opportunities for people to set up sort of streams of work into their own, or lines in fab shops that are just handling, you know, sold work. Because, you know, what's interesting is I've sold a lot of prefabrication work in my life. When I was at Modern Piping, we became a globally approved fabricator for Shell Oil and DuPont Chemical, ADM, Cargill, and a whole bunch of others. And what we quickly realized was there were differing quality demands on the parts of companies like Shell and DuPont. You know, when you make mistakes there, people can die. So you got to do some really heavy quality stuff. That's very different than when you're building a chilled water system for an elementary school. There's no risk there. So the focus that needs to be placed on a weld, let's say in a situation where every weld has to be X-rayed, is very different than when it's just chilled water and there's very little pressure and nobody cares. So they welded up really well in both circumstances, but one of those has to be X-rayed every single time. So yeah, we set up streams for those works so that we could manage the quality, we can manage the flow, because those obviously take a lot longer and they would slow up the other lines if we didn't. But yeah, there's certainly opportunities for businesses to set up entire business units focused on this.
But what are
Come on.
Yes.
You sound
Well, I
like
was
you're
going-
still on the subject, so go for it.
Well, marketplace hacks and tricks of growing the marketplace.
I
buy,
don't know yet.
buy my book. I have a
call-
100-page checklist, 100-item
Yeah.
checklist.
Call me in a year. I'll tell you in a year if we're successful.
This is how you don't do it.
I didn't say
I'll-
successful marketplace. I said marketplace.
Well, I could build a marketplace, but if no one buys from it, who cares? So
At least me
I
and
think-
Owen are there as at least a supplier
appreciate that.
and the other one.
Yeah. So, at the end of the day, it's about liquidity. You have to make sure you have enough suppliers to meet the demand of the buyers, and you have to make sure you have enough demand on the buyer's side to keep the suppliers interested. And so, marketplace is really, it's a fairly simple business to understand. It's a very difficult business to execute.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, repeat that again. Do you have to have enough demand so the suppliers come on? And what was the other bit?
You have to have enough supply that the demand is able to be filled. Because if you come to the marketplace and you have an order for $100,000 in prefab and nobody fills it because you don't have anybody,
Yeah.
well, I'm probably not coming back to the marketplace again.
Yes.
Very good. Okay, cool. Yeah, I was going to ask you, Britton. So something I think is different from how you built MSuite was that you have a decentralized team now. So you, I believe the technical stuff is carried out in India.
India and Ukraine at this point, yeah.
Yeah. So how is what was the thinking behind that?
What's funny is I wasn't planning on it, but I also wasn't excluding it from the opportunity. I think when I was at MSuite, we hired initially everyone local. And when I mean local, I mean in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and it was great. But then as time went on, we hired a great software engineer named Zach Smith out of, at that time, Phoenix, Arizona, because he could do BIM stuff really well. He wrote C# and the rest of our team was writing in JavaScript. So he built the beginnings of our Revit plugin. And then we hired another Revit guy in Boise, Idaho, and Denver, Colorado, and so on and so forth across the United States. And what I realized was working with them was just as easy as working with the people in our office. And then COVID hit and everyone went home. And it was like, wait a minute, we're still okay. This is just fine. And then when I went to work for Snaptrude, Snaptrude is based out of New York, but also Bangalore, India. And the bulk of the team is in Bangalore, where Altaf Kanihar is from.
Mm-hmm.
And actually he's from Hubli, but he's from India. And I realized that works too. And we've got a great team over there. So then when I went to hire my own engineering team, I was very specific on the requirements, meaning the skills that I wanted to find, but I don't care where they come from. And so I had a few great people that I interviewed in the Bay Area. I had a few great people, one in DC, one in Argentina, a couple in Ukraine, and one in Poland. And ultimately the guy who I thought was just the best fit came from to us from Falcon X, which is a high frequency crypto trading platform. Amazing human being, brilliant guy, happens to be in Bangalore, India. And he had a guy on his team at Falcon X that he loved working with and said, we got to hire this guy, also in Bangalore, India. So, it just kind of went that way. We needed some BIM work to build our Revit plugin. I had worked with a phenomenal company called AMC Bridge out of Ukraine, and we went to them to help us build the Revit plugin to export Revit models into BuildFactory so that people could, get estimates and buy prefab from the Revit model. So, I think at the end of the day, it was more about removing constraints from a geographic perspective, as long as they're willing to work, some way that overlaps US hours so that we have time zone support and we have working together, right? It's impossible to build a business if, they're sleeping while I'm working and I'm sleeping while they're working. So as long as we had coverage from that perspective, I didn't care where they were.
Is it, it's quite an interesting thing to think about, because it's totally different dynamic, and some people don't enjoy working remotely because they like to be surrounded by people and they're social animals and so on.
I'm
and
one
so
of them.
forth. Yeah,
I'm one of them. I hate remote work. It is the bane of my existence. But the reality is it's a lot less expensive. I don't have to have an office. I don't have to pay the bills. I don't have to do all that. And, COVID changed everything. We have the ability to do that now. We have tools like Zoom and Google Meet and a lot of other tools that have come to market since then that make it better to work remotely. But yeah, I very much miss the water cooler. I very much miss the lunches with the team. But the reality is, with the money I save there, I can make a trip to Bangalore and spend time with the team and take them out for dinner and
Fair
do all
enough.
that.
Yeah. Makes sense. Very good point. Okay. How long have we got? 10 minutes or so? Where do you want to go, Martin? 5-year vision? Actually, your 5-year vision would be a good one. Then we can go into off topic quickly.
Yeah, maybe before this, quickly, what are like pitfalls of marketplaces that try to establish themselves, but they didn't manage, or like what are
I know the answer. No supply, no demand.
Pretty simple. All right. So the major pitfalls for marketplaces, the build it and they will come idea is never work. I mean, not never, rarely works. You really have to target a group of people and stay on top of them, because until it's a thing, it's not a thing. And whether it's Uber or Airbnb, I brought up the Democratic National Convention for Airbnb. If you don't know that story, the 2008 Democratic National Convention was being held in Denver. Barack Obama at the time was running for president, and there was a huge number of people that wanted to come into Denver, but the hotels were full. And the founder of Airbnb decided he would reach out to people in Denver on their houses and say, hey, come put your house on this Airbnb thing. And then he put signs all over Denver to stay at an Airbnb, stay at somebody's house. And that's what sort of launched it. It was that sort of catalyst event that launched it. But he didn't just say, okay, we're here, we're done. No, he had to go to the next city and the next city and the next city and the next city. And people forget that overnight successes are never overnight. And the hard work that goes into becoming top of mind for somebody when they're awarded a contract and all of a sudden they realize they missed $200,000 in scope. Oops. What do you do? Well, right now the thought is, well, we got to figure out if there's a change order. We got to fab more. We got to do this. We got to do that. It's not, well, let's dump 3 or 4 packages on the BuildFactory marketplace and see if we can save some money, right? That's not a thing yet. So we have to make that a thing. We have to make that top of mind. And that just comes down to hard work. And if you think that you're going to build something and people are just going to adopt it because it becomes, something in the ether, it's not going to work. Like I said earlier, there are no shortcuts.
Tons and tons of education.
Repetition as well.
Yeah, I found we spoke to a few companies recently where I just think the product they got is amazing, but it just there needs to be more awareness around the product and more education. Have you had any thoughts about how to execute on something like that, Britton? Like, how do you really tell your customers and like the channels that you use to get to them to tell them that, you need to use this?
Yes. Construction in particular. It's not so much in architecture, but a little bit in architecture. But construction in particular has FOMO more than any industry I've ever seen in my life. The fear of missing out is massive.
What do you mean?
And if you find out that you lost a bid to contractor X,
okay,
and you find out later that they're using product Y, and you're not. And I promise you, the very first thing they do is go to Product Y's website. Oh, what is that? And then they see 4 other companies. Why do you think in construction technology, every single construction technology company has trusted by this company, this company, this company?
It's legit. Land the logos, huh? That's what everyone says. Like,
absolutely.
Get the logos first and expand.
If you start to get those logos and really add value, like they're actually singing from the rooftops about how amazing your solution is, it's naturally expandable. I think virality, the virality in construction, the market's not huge, even though the dollars are huge. The market's not that big. There are the Mortensons of the world, the Barton Mallows of the world, the Kajimas of the world, the Shimizus, the name it. Everyone knows these logos across the world. And when they come out and sing from the rooftops about product Y or whatever, or workflow that they've now adopted, or they're starting to build offsite, or they've adopted BIM, or whatever it is. People listen. And so number one is getting in front of those people that matter, getting in front of those people that can really influence the rest of the industry. We don't have a lot of really like influencers like you might see on the B2C world. But we have a huge amount of FOMO. The other thing I would say is you got to meet them where they're at, right? If you're doing Instagram ads for construction companies, probably not the right channel. Unless you want to hit them between the hours of 6 p.m. and midnight, right? When they're just chilling on the couch. And so it depends on the product, depends on the voice that you want to have. And, when it comes to go to market there, I think at the end of the day, authenticity is the most important thing. If you have a great product and you pretend like you're the greatest thing since sliced bread, everyone's going to see through that. And the moment you get in front of them and it doesn't work the way you said it worked, you're done.
Yeah.
You can't sell the future. You have to sell the now. You can sell the future, but you have to be honest about it. You have to say, hey, here's what we're working on. We're not there yet. But if you work with us, if you work with us, we'll get there. And I've already built this, and here's how far we've gotten so far. You can see what we've done, but here's what we're doing next. And they have to buy into that, because the reality is today, construction technology takes a long time to build. Now, AI is helping with that, but like these workflows are not simple. And they're also very configured to the construction company's own way of doing things. And most companies don't like to change that. So you have to sort of build something that they can adopt and feel like they invented it, even though you just made it to where it was configurable for them.
So what's next?
What's next for us? So our launch, right? That's the big thing that's next. September 8th is the big day. We'll launch the marketplace and the very beginnings of the project management software, which we're really excited about. Basically,
that was loud.
That was loud.
Sorry about that.
That wasn't me.
That was me.
Okay, someone's over to no one's house. Is it DoorDash or what?
No,
who's coming?
No. My wife will get it. So hopefully,
I love it. So the launch is next, and then the software that we're releasing along with the marketplace, we're really excited about. And I won't say a bunch about it, but the impetus is that the communication in this industry is extremely important. Most of our industry makes decisions by communicating with each other. And largely speaking, that communication goes away, goes into the ether. And we're building something that surfaces that in a way that is incredibly intuitive, incredibly user-friendly, and feels like you have somebody watching your back at all times. So I'll leave it at that, but we're really excited about that. And hopefully we'll have a POC and beta partners. We have beta partners signed up for it, but beta partners using it around the same time, 1st of September.
Very good.
So that's what's next.
Okay. All right, cool. Let's wrap this up. I think we're good for time. So yeah, Britton, thanks. Good luck. It's an exciting journey. I wish you would have come to us when you were raising money, because we'd have given you a few quid.
That'd be great. I suck at raising money. It's not what I do. That is probably my worst aspect of a founder. I'm not very good at it. Fortunately, I've been very lucky with being able to raise money from building ventures and some amazing angels on the construction side of this industry. And I think we're fully funded and ready to go, and we are going. And I think if I ever have to do this again, I will call you when raising money, because I'm certainly not going to do it.
Cool, man. All right, Britton.
Okay, Britton.
Thank you.
Where people can find out more about you?
Yeah. Well, I'm on LinkedIn and I'm on Twitter. You can search Britton Langdon. It's pretty easy to find. And then our website is buildfactory.io. That's where you'll see most of it. We've got all our blogs and newsletters will be coming out there. And so buildfactory.io is probably the best place.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you.